ghostly stories for grown-ups. And tonight, it's My Nook by Nigel Kneale. The estate agent kept an uncomfortable silence until he had reached his car. "Frankly, I wish you hadn't got wind of that," he said. "Don't know how you did. I thought I had the whole thing carefully disposed of. Please, get in." He pulled his door shut and frowned. "It puts me in a rather awkward spot. I suppose I'd better tell you all I know about that case, or you'd be suspecting me of heaven knows what kinds of chicanery of your own." As we set off to see the property I was interested in, he shifted the cigarette to the side of his mouth. "It's quite a distance, so I can tell you on the way there," he said. "We'll pass the very spot, as a matter of fact, and you can see it for yourself, such as there is to see." "It was away back before the war," said the estate agent, "at the height of the building boom. You remember how it was, ribbon development in the full blast everywhere, speculative builders sticking things up almost overnight. Though at least you could get a house when you wanted it in those days. I've always been careful in what I handle, I want you to understand that. Then one day I was handed a packet of Coast Road bungalows for letting, put up by one of those gone-tomorrow firms, and bought by a local man. I can't say I exactly jumped for joy, but for once the things looked all right. Business is inclined to be business. The desirable residence you heard about stood at the end of the row. Actually, it seemed to have the best site, on a sort of natural platform, as it were, raised above the road level and looking straight out over the sea. Like all the rest, it had a simple two-bedroom lounge, living room, kitchen, bathroom layout, red-tiled roof, rough-cast walls, ornamental portico, garden strip all around. Sufficiently far from town, but with all the conveniences. It was taken by a man named Pritchard, cinema projectionist. I think he was. Wife, a boy of 10 or so, and a rather younger daughter. Oh, and a dog. One of those black, lop-eared animals. They christened the place My Nook. Minuke. My Nook. Yes, that's what I said as well, and not even the miserable excuse of it being phonetically correct. Still, hardly worse than most. Well, at the start of everything, it seemed quite jolly. The Pritchards settled in and busied themselves with rearing a privet hedge and shoving flowers in. They'd paid the first quarter in advance, and as far as I was concerned, were out of the picture for a bit. Then, about a fortnight after they moved in, I had a telephone call from Mrs. P to say there was something odd about the kitchen tap. Apparently the thing had happened twice. The first time was when her sister was visiting them and tried to fill the kettle. No water would come through for a long time. Then suddenly squirted violently and almost soaked the woman. I gather the Pritchards hadn't really believed this, thought she was trying to find fault with their little nest. It had never happened before. And she couldn't make it happen again. Then, about a week later, it did. With Mrs. Pritchard this time. After her husband had examined the tap and could find nothing wrong with it, he decided that the water supply must be faulty, so they got on to me. I went round personally, as it was the first complaint from any of these bungalows. The tap seemed normal, and I remember asking if the schoolboy son could have been experimenting with their main stop, when Mrs. Pritchard, who'd been fiddling with the tap, suddenly said, "Quick, look at this! It's off now!" They were quite cocky about it happening when I was there. It really was odd. I turned the tap to the limit, but not a drop, not even the sort of gasping gurgle you hear when the supply is turned off at the main. After a couple of minutes, though, it came on. Water shot out, I should say, with about 10 times normal force, as if it had been held under pressure. Then gradually it died down and ran steadily. Both children were in the room with us until we dodged out of the door to escape a soaking. It had splashed all over the ceiling, so they couldn't have been up to any tricks. I promised the Pritchards to have the pipes checked. Before returning to town, I called at the next two bungalows in the row. Neither of the tenants had had any trouble with the water. I thought, well, that localised it at least. When I reached my office, there was a telephone message waiting from Pritchard. I rang him back, and he was obviously annoyed. "Look here," he said. "Not 10 minutes after you left, we've had something else happen. The wall of the large bedroom's cracked from top to bottom." Big pieces of plaster fell, and the bed's in a terrible mess. And then he said, "You wouldn't have got me in a jerry-built place like this if I'd known." I had plasterers on the job next morning and the whole water supply to My Nook under examination. For about 3 days there was peace. The tap behaved itself and absolutely nothing was found to be wrong. I was annoyed at what seemed to have been an unnecessary expenditure. It looked as if the Pritchards were going to be difficult. And I've had my share of that type. Fault-finding cranks occasionally carry eccentricity to the extent of a little private destruction to prove their points. I was on the watch from now on. Then it came again. Pritchard rang me at my home before 9 in the morning. His voice sounded a bit off, shaky. "For God's sake, can you come round here right away?" he said. Tell you about it when you get here." Then he said, almost fiercely, but quietly and close to the mouthpiece, "There's something damned queer about this place." Dramatising it in a typical feature of all cranks, I thought, but particularly the little mousy kind, like Pritchard. I went to My Nook and found that Mrs. Pritchard was in bed with a state of collapse. The doctor had given her a sleeping dose. Pritchard told me a tale that was chiefly remarkable for the expression on his face as he told it. I don't know if you're familiar with the layout of that type of bungalow. The living room is in the front of the house, with the kitchen behind it. To get from one to the other, you have to use a little hallway through 2 doors. But for convenience at mealtimes, there's a serving hatch in the wall between these rooms. A small wooden door slides up and down over the hatch opening. The wife was just passing a big plate of bacon and eggs through the kitchen, Pritchard told me. When the hatch door came down on her wrists, I saw it, and I heard her yell. I thought the cord must have snapped, so I said, all right, and went to put it up because it's only a light wooden frame. Pritchard was a funny colour, as far as I could judge. It was genuine. "Do you know, it wouldn't come. I got my fingers under it and heaved, but it might have weighed 200 weight. Once it gave an inch or so, then pressed harder. I said, 'Hold on,' and nipped round through the hall, and when I got to the kitchen, she was on the floor, fainted, and the hatch door was hitched up as right as ninepence." That gave me a turn. He sat down, quite deflated. It didn't appear to be put on. Still, ordinary neurotics can be almost as troublesome as out-and-out cranks. I tested the hatch gingerly, and of course the cords were sound and it ran easily. "Possibly a bit stiff at times, being new," I said. "They're apt to jam if you're rough with them. And then, by the way, just what were you hinting on the phone?" He looked at me. It was warm sunlight outside with a bus passing. Normal enough to take the mic out of Frankenstein's monster. Never mind. He said that and he gave me a sheepish half-grin. Bit of, funny construction in this house, though, eh? I'm afraid I was rather outspoken with him, let alone any twaddle about a month-old bungalow being haunted. I was determined to clamp down on this jerry-building talk. Perhaps I was beginning to have doubts myself. I wrote straight off to the building company when I'd managed to trace them, busy developing an arterial road about 3 counties away. I dare say my letter was in the insinuating side. I think I asked if they had any record of difficulties in the construction of this bungalow. At any rate, I got a sniffy reply by return stating that the matter was out of their hands. In addition, their records were not available for discussion. Blind alley. In the meantime, things at My Nook had worsened to a really frightening degree. I dreaded the phone ringing. One morning, the 2 Pritchards senior awoke to find that nearly all the furniture in their bedroom had been moved about, including the bed. They had been sleeping and they'd felt nothing. Food became suddenly and revoltingly decomposed. All the chimney pots had come down, not just into the garden, but to the far side of the high road, except one, which appeared pulverized on the living room floor. The obvious attempts of the Pritchards to keep a rational outlook had put paid to most of my suspicions by this time. I managed to locate a local man who had been employed during the erection of the bungalows as an extra hand. He had worked only on the foundations of My Nook, but what he had to say was interesting. They'd found the going slow because of a striking layer of enormous flat stones, apparently trimmed slate. But as the site was otherwise excellent, they pressed on, using the stone as foundation where it fitted in with a plan, and laying down rubble where it didn't. The concrete skin over the rubble. My ears burned when I heard about that. I can tell you this Richard so-called concrete had cracked or shattered several times, which wasn't entirely surprising if it had been laid on as described. The flat stones, he said, had not been seriously disturbed. A workmate had referred to them as a giant's grave, so it was possibly an old burial mound, Norse, perhaps. Those are fairly common along this coast, or even very much older. Apart from this, I'm no die-hard skeptic, I may as well confess. I was beginning to admit modest theories about a poltergeist. In spite of a lack of corroborative knockings and ornament throwing, there were 2 young children in the house, and the law has it that kids are often unconsciously connected with a phenomena of that sort, though usually adolescents. Still, in the real estate profession, you have to be careful. And if I could see the Pritchards safely off the premises without airing these possibilities, it might be the kindest to the bungalow's future. I went to My Nook the same afternoon, and it was certainly turning out an odd nook. I found a departing policeman on the doorstep. That morning the back door had been burst in by 100-weight or so of soil, and Mrs. Pritchard was trying to convince herself that a practical joker had it in for them. The policeman had taken some notes and was giving vague advice about civil action, which showed that he was out of his depth. Pritchard looked very tired, almost ill. "I've got leave from my job to look after them," he said when we were alone. I thought he was wise. He had given his wife's illness as the reasons, and I was glad of that. I don't believe in unnatural happenings," he said. I agreed with him non-committally. "But I'm afraid of what ideas the kids might get. They're both at impressionable ages, you know." I recognised the symptoms without disappointment. "You mean you'd rather move elsewhere?" I said. "I like the district, mind you, but There was a report, like a gun. In that very room, I found myself with both arms up to cover my face. There were tiny splinters everywhere and a dust of fibre in the air. The door had exploded. Literally. To hark back to constructional details, it was one of those light hollow frame and plywood jobs. As you'll know, it takes considerable force to splinter plywood. Well, this was in tiny fragments, and the oddest thing was that we had felt no blast effect. In the next room I heard the dog howling. Pritchard was as stiff as a poker. "I felt it," he said. "I felt this lot coming. I've got to knowing when something's likely to happen. It's all around." Of course, I began to imagine I'd sensed something too, but I doubt if I had really. My shock came with the crash. Mrs. Pritchard was in the doorway by this time with the kids behind her. He motioned them out and grabbed my arm. "The thing is," he whispered, "that I can still feel it, stronger than ever. By God, look, will you stay at home tonight in case in case things get worse? I can phone you." On my way back, I called at the town library and managed to get hold of a volume on supernatural possession and whatnot. Yes, I was committed now. But the library didn't specialise in that line. When I opened the book at home, I found it was very little help. Vampires of southeastern Europe type of stuff. I came across references to something the jargon called an elemental, which I took to be a good deal more vicious and destructive than any poltergeist. A thoroughly nasty form of manifestation, if it existed. These Norse gravestones, were fitting into the picture uncomfortably well. It was fashionable in those days to be buried with all the trimmings, human sacrifice, and even more unmentionable attractions. But I read on. After half a chapter on zombies and Romanian werewolves, and the whole thing began to seem so fantastic, I turned seriously to working out methods of exploding somebody's door as a practical joke. Even a totally certifiable joker would be likelier than vampires. In no time I'd settled down with a whiskey, doodling wiring diagrams, and only occasionally, like twinges of conscience, speculating on contacting the psychic investigation people. When the phone rang, I was hardly prepared for it. It was a confused, distant voice, gabbling desperately, but I recognised it as Pritchard. "For God's sake, don't lose a second. Get here, get here. Oh, it's hell on earth. Can't you hear it? My God, I'm going crazy." And in the background, I thought I was able to hear something, a sort of bubbling, shushing, wah, wah noise, indescribable. But you hear some odd sounds on telephones at any time. Yes, I said, I'll come immediately. Why don't you all leave? But the line had gone dead. Probably I've never moved faster. I scrambled out to the car with untied shoes, though I remembered to grab a heavy stick in the hall, whatever use it was to be. I drove like fury, heart belting, straight to My Nook, expecting to see heaven knows what, but everything looked still and normal. The moon was up, and I could see the whole place clearly. Curtained lights in the windows. Not a sound. I rang. After a moment, Pritchard opened the door. He was quiet and seemed almost surprised to see me. I pushed inside. "Well, what happened?" "Not a thing, so far," he said. "That's why I didn't expect—" I felt suddenly angry. "Look here," I said. "What are you playing at? Seems to me that any hoaxing round here begins a lot nearer home than you'd have me believe." Then the penny dropped. I saw by the fright in his face that he knew something had gone wrong. That was the most horrible, sickening moment of the whole affair for me. "Didn't you ring?" I said. He shook his head. "I've been in some tight spots, but there's always some concrete actual business in hand to screw the mind safely down to. I suppose panic is when the subconscious breaks loose and everything in your head dashes, screaming out. It was only just in time that I found a touch of the concrete and a kiddie's paint box on the floor, very watery. The children, where are they?" "Wife's just putting the little into bed. She's been restless tonight, just wouldn't go, crying and difficult. Arthur's in the bathroom. Look here. What's happened?" I told him, making it as short and matter-of-fact as I could. He turned ghastly. "Better get them dressed and out of here right away," I said. "Make some excuse, not to alarm them." He'd gone before I finished speaking. I smoked hard, trying to build up the idea of hoax in my mind. After all, it could have been. But I knew it wasn't. Everything looked cosy and normal. Clock ticking, fire red and mellow, half-empty cocoa mug on the table, the sound of the sea from beyond the road. I went through to the kitchen. The dog was there, looking up from its sleeping basket under the sink. "Good dog," I said, and it wriggled its tail. Pritchard came in from the hall. He jumped when he saw me. "Getting nervy," he said. "They won't be long. I don't know if we can go. Well, if we have to leave tonight." "My car's outside," I told him. "I'll fix you up. Look here, did you ever hear things? Odd noises?" I'd told him that part of the telephone call. He looked at me oddly. I thought he was going to collapse. "I don't know," he said. "Can you, at this moment?" I listened. "No," I said. "The clock on the shelf? The sea? Nothing else? No." "The sea," he said it, barely whispering. "But you can't hear the sea in this kitchen." He was close to me in an instant, absolutely terrified. "Yes, I've heard this before. I think we all have. I said it was the sea so as not to frighten them, but it isn't, and I recognised it when I came in here just now. That's what made me start. It's getting louder. It does that." He was right. Like slow breathing. It seemed to emanate from inside the walls, not at any particular spot, but everywhere. He went into the hall, then the front room. It was the same there. Mixed with it now was a sort of thin crying. "That's Nellie," Pritchard said. "The dog. She always whimpers when it's on. Too scared to howl. My God, I've never heard it as loud as this before. Hurry up then, will you?" I almost shouted. He went. The breathing was ghastly, slobbering, stertorous, I think the term is, and faster. Oh yes, I recognised it. The background music to the phone message. My skin was pure ice. "Come along," I whispered. I yelled. I switched on the little radio to drown the noise, the old national programme as it was in those days. Late dance music, yes. Believe it or not, what came through that loudspeaker was the same vile, sighing noise at double the volume. And when I tried to switch it off, it stayed the same. The whole bungalow was trembling. The Pritchards came running in. She was carrying the little girl. "Get them into the car," I shouted. We heard glass smashing everywhere. Above our heads, there was an almighty thump. Plaster showered down. Halfway out of the door, the little girl screamed, "Nellie! Where's Nellie? Nellie! Nellie!" "The dog!" Pritchard moaned. "Oh, curse it!" He dragged them outside. I dived for the kitchen, where I'd seen the animal, feeling a lunatic for doing it. Plaster was springing out of the walls in painful showers. In the kitchen, I found water everywhere. One tap was squirting like a fire hose. The other was missing, water belching across the window from a torn end of pipe. "Nellie!" I called. Then I saw the dog. It was lying near the oven, quite stiff. Round its neck was a piece of painted piping, with the other tap on the end of it. Sheer funk got me then. The ground was moving under me. I bolted down the hall, nearly bumped into Pritchard. I yelled and shoved. I could actually feel the house at my back. We got outside. The noise was like a dreadful snoring with rumbles and crashes round it. One of the lights went out. "Nellie's run away," I said, and we all got in the car, the kids bawling. I started up. People were coming out of the other bungalows. They're pretty far apart, but the din was just beginning to make itself felt. Pritchard grumbled. "We could stop now. Think it'd be safe to go back and grab some of the furniture." As if he was at a fire. But I don't think he knew what he was doing. "Daddy! Look!" screeched the boy. We saw it. The chimney of my Nook was going up in a horrible way. In the moonlight, it seemed to grow quite slowly, to about 60 feet, like a giant, crooked finger. And then it burst. I heard bricks thumping down. Somewhere, somebody screamed. There was a glare like an ungodly great lightning flash. It lasted for a second or so. Of course, we were dazzled, but I thought I saw the whole of my Nook fall suddenly and instantaneously flat, like a swatted fly. I probably did, because that's what happened. There isn't much more to tell. Nobody was really hurt, and we were able to put down the whole thing as a serious electrical fault. Main fuses had blown throughout the whole district, which helped this theory out. Perhaps it was unfortunate in another respect, because a lot of people changed over to gas. There wasn't much recognisably left of my Nook, but some of the bits were rather unusual. Knots in pipes, for instance. I buried what was left of the dog myself. Wooden brick, cleanly sliced. Small quantities of completely powdered metal. The bath had been squashed flat, like tinfoil. In fact, Pritchard was lucky to land the insurance money for his furniture. My professional problem, of course, remained. The plot where the wretched place had stood. I managed to persuade the owner it wasn't ideal for building on. Incidentally, lifting those stones might reveal something to somebody someday. But not to me, thank you. I think my eventual solution showed a touch of wit. I let it very cheaply. As a scrap metal dump. Well, I know I've never been able to make any sense out of it. I hate telling you all this stuff because it must make me seem either a simpleton or a charlatan. Insofar as there's any circumstantial evidence in looking at the place, you can see it in a moment or two. Here's the coast road. The car pulled up at a bare spot beyond a sparse line of bungalows. The space was marked by a straggling, tufty square of privet bushes. Inside, I could see a tangle of rusty irons, springs, a car chassis, oil drums. The hedge keeps it from being too unsightly, said the estate agent, as we crossed to see it. See, the remains of the gate. A few half-rotten slats dangled from an upright. One still bore part of a chrome-plated name, M.I., and a little further on, K. Nothing much worth seeing now, he said. I peered inside. Not that there ever was much. Look out! I felt a violent push. In the same instant, something zipped past my head and crashed against the car behind. My God! Went right at you, gasped the agent. It had shattered a window of the car and gone through the open door opposite. We found it in the road beyond, sizzling on the tarmac. A heavy steel nut, white hot. I don't know about you, the estate agent said, but I'm rather in favour of getting out of here. And we did. Quickly. My Nook by Nigel Kneale. What did you think? What did you think about that story? Intriguing little piece. Quite visual. A visual writer. Do you think? Dog! Dead dog. Nelly! I don't know when it was written. But I wonder if it was written at the height of that Battersea poltergeist 70s time, when everything was a bit mad for that. It has the feel of that, doesn't it? The reference to the poltergeist existence and things like that. Did it go the way you expected? Was it a surprise? Was there any tension? Did you get a little bit nervous? Was it too hammy? Quite a contemporary story again. I'm looking it up. Nigel Kneale. My Nook. What does it say about it? Lots of people read it. I should put these out on a podcast. I'd have to read them better. Born in Barrow in Furness, very Viking, Lancashire. Yes, it's spelt Minuke. But it was My Nook. Real Ghost. First published January the 1st, 1949. Thank you. The first story I chose is My Nook by Nigel Kneale. Kneale is best known for the creator of Quatermass, obviously of Quatermass in the Pit and the Quatermass Experiment, and the like. Also, playwright and writer of British television. Kneale is most intriguing to me as the author of a collection of short stories called Tomato Cane and Other Stories, a volume that is regularly mentioned as an important part of British horror writing, and is also now completely unavailable unless you're willing to and able to spend $100 or more. My Nook takes the form of a story being related to our narrator, the Count. Oh, very not well read. What's it telling me? What's it telling me about it? I'm just too focused on that. I should be focused on you. Real ghosts. That was intense. We said it could only. We said we could really see it. Yes, I think the writing was very visual, almost more connected to the senses when things like that, the exploding door happened, but they didn't feel the blast, played about with their expectations. Absolutely. So was it a Norse? Yeah, I think it was a classic. You think the film Poltergeist? Was the film Poltergeist utterly influenced by this? A house built on a grave. An Indian reservation, as it's called in the film. It's utterly a rip-off, isn't it? It's utterly a rip-off. I don't like dogs or kids or families or people. Yes, I think the suggestion there is a house built on a grave, a Norse grave. What is it about the metal, though? What is it about the metal? And is My Nook... I was trying to read that. Very clean and entertaining and British in its prose. This last I mean in the best sense, and for me that counts as high praise. Yeah, I think it was clean, to the point, visual. That's why I think I'd enjoyed that. I just didn't think it liked them being there. It shouldn't have been there. Didn't like plywood. I didn't get more specific. Didn't like taps. Didn't like plywood. So this predates that. Good evening, Loopy Loo. That big 60s explosion of poltergeist activity. But did it influence it? I don't know. It's quite enjoyable reading something a bit more contemporary. The language, the sparsity of the language. Even though there were some words in it I stumbled over. I'm so sorry. These are mostly cold readings. I do skim them. But I quite like the surprise of it. That's the challenge for me. Can't bloody read without this. There was a word in here I need to look up. First of all, I've got to find it. I know this is I'm being a bit obsessed, but is the sound good? Is it noticeably good? Or is it no difference? Please be honest with me. Stertorous. Let me look that up. ST, I'm saying it wrong. ERT OROUS. Adjective of breathing, noisy and laboured. The breathing was becoming less stertorous. So it's a medical term. It's good, louder, clearer than usual. That's good to hear. Because it's allowing me to go louder on the gain as well. I can go up a little bit without it going red. There. That's good. That's money well spent then. For professional reasons, not this stupid business on Twitch. I'm quite surprised it's as early as the late 40s. As the 40s. I really am. I thought it would be like a 60s piece. No pain, no gain. It was painful buying it, mate. What are you reading at the minute? Anything new this week? Anything caught your eye? Watched anything good? Seen anything good? Read anything spooky? I'm a subscriber now. Mini Freak Manual. I agree with Josie Ray on sound. That's good. I'm pleased. As I say, I do twitchy things. The haunting season. Hello, Katie. What's the haunting season? Tell us about that. Sound. Oh, that's praise indeed from Biff. I'm a new subscriber to this magazine. Very old magazine. Oh. The World of Strange Phenomena. I'm reading My Mess is a Bit of a Life, a sort of memoir about anxiety by comedy writer Georgia Pritchett. Oh, I've listened to a podcast about that. Ooh, Fortean. Ooh, Josie Ray has that, but haven't started reading. I'm growing ghost story ideas for a show for the autumn. So this is helpful. What have we got? Give you some of the headlines. Huge strangeness in Connecticut. Russia versus psychics. Alien hand, brackets probably not. Crypto curiosities, recent ones. Meteorite mayhem. Blimey, is that still going? I thought they would have been running out of things to write about by now. Dark nature. Interesting, an article about great white sharks in Hawaii is accompanied by a picture from Jaws. The Great Toaster Hoax. Some archaeology. That's nasty. Fusion. The Spirits of Glencoe. Giant squid. Let's all go. Talking about a lot. Fairies, folklore, and Forteana. It's a mixed read. What is it? Short stories, Katie? Is it short stories? We completed tonight. We like to have a program we watch over dinner. We completed Our Flag Means Death, Ghost Stories. Oh, I missed that one above. Short ghost stories by contemporary writers. The haunting season. Problem is I can't read them because I'll get done for copyright, won't I? Lest we ask one of the writers. Search. Oh no, I didn't mean to print that. I don't want to print the words "the haunting season." I want to Google them. Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I think Josie, you've mentioned that, haven't you? Yes. Ghostly Tales for Long Winter Nights. I'll have to get that. I think I said that last time. Yes, we finished Our Flag Means Death tonight. Has anybody else watched that? I'm not going to spoil it in any way. I'm going to recommend it highly. I'm just going to brush my beard again. I like it. I like the feel of it. You've watched it. I thought it was utterly charming and very funny. Not yet. Not yet. What else? I've been watching old 90s TV. Go back to what you know. It was sweet for a part. It was sweet. I also think... Has anybody here watched Black Sails? Was that on Prime? I rather liked that as early prime Black Sails. It borrowed a lot from that as well as other sources, obviously. Oh, there's Edith. Hello, darling. How have you been? Okay. Night, friends. Have to do an early one. Okay. Right. Living with Yourself. I watched Living with Yourself, which I liked, but I don't think there's going to be a second season. Oh, that's always annoying. Next week is National Storytelling Week. All right. And I'm suggesting, and no one has to, that if you've got a story you'd like to tell, I'd like you to come and tell it. Now, there's ways we can do this, different ways. One, if you want to read a short story, I'd say we're looking at 10 minutes. A few people do 10 minutes. I really like the idea you enforce it. What does that mean? You come on. You go on. You can come on. There's different ways. You can come on to the Discord. You can call me. Oh yeah, that drawing one's good. Everyone must read. I'd love it if everyone did. Have an extract. It could be a short. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be ghostly or spooky or supernatural. Yeah, homework. Yeah, homework. I think there's literally if they're still here, there's someone who's literally had homework set by me in this chat. Yeah, I would love it. Homework. Oh, Biff. Whoa, you're on one. I like it. Don't hug me, and you have to tell a story. Don't sit anywhere near me. All right, and make sure the sound is good on your streams. I can read something you've written. You can read an extract. It doesn't have to be a whole story. It's National Storytelling Week. I would love it. So I want you all to come with an extract from your favourite book. It can be a poem. You can pre-record it. Does Biff get out of it by being the enforcer? No! Biff has to do this live on Discord. Biff is going to read from one of those bound, beautiful books of theirs. You don't have to introduce it. I can do that. You can just come on and read and go. We don't have to chat about it. It can just be a short extract. I will have something. I will have more than enough, obviously. I'll just have a story. I have to pre-record and try to make myself not monotone. You can pre-record. I can just play it. So that's what's happening next week. So you need to be able to... I mean, I would prefer it if you were on the Discord already looking at my bookshelf. As I say, it doesn't have to be supernatural. It does not have to be ghostly. It just has to be something you enjoy reading. It can be a poem. It can be prose. It can be a piece of text of any kind. You could have written it. Thing with pre-record, I can delete. Yeah, you can get it to whatever you want. I say don't do that. Keep it natural. Stumble like I do. This is a non-judgmental space of lovely people. All we're doing is sharing, signposting. Okay? That's next Monday. Keep it terrifying would be good. Find an old Dennis Wheatley and read something. It could be whatever. I'm gonna say, right. It could be anything. I'm gonna say it could be anything for National Storytelling Week. All right. Have a think about it. You can send me messages. Get me anywhere. You can get me anywhere. You can ask me questions. You can, but please accept the challenge. Will you do that? Will you do that for me? Will you do that? There's not going to be, so there's going to be, I'm here tomorrow night, but there's not going to be a Tuesday or a Sunday next week because I'm busy. I am busy, okay? I'm so busy next week. It's National Storytelling Week, and I'm travelling as well. I shall be in Brig. I shall be in Brig, just south of Hull, next week doing a public show, my first public show of 2023. How about that? I shall be in schools and then in Brig. I need to get prepared for that. Right, I tell you what we're going to do is we're going to do our normal. Johnny Briggs lives in Briggs. Do you remember the Johnny Briggs theme? I do. I'm going to do the normal thing, which is it's Monday night, 10 o'clock. No one... I am literally making a show of myself in Brig. I'm going to invite people to slope off into shifty obscurity on this Monday night. Make sure you eat a sausage. What's the reference there, Loopy Lou? I'm still staying, but I'm going to give you the chance to. So this is. I'm going to stop the stream in a couple of minutes' time. Then I'm going to immediately restart it. All right. Da 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 da. I can't remember it. That used to be the theme tune of my radio show, Johnny Briggs. My mum, who's a nurse, that's right, yes. Lincolnshire sausages. It's North Lincolnshire, isn't it? It is North Lincolnshire. I am staying in a pub Tuesday night with breakfast. So I will request a sausage delivered to my room. A spicy... Yeah. Our trombone player always soundcheck with the Johnny Briggs theme song. Oh, nostalgia. It ain't what it used to be, is it? All right, so either good night, thank you very much, or I'll be back in 30 seconds' time. Definitely back tomorrow night. Don't know with what yet. But in the meantime, thank you very much. Please don't have nightmares. The chance that your house or your dwelling is built on where somebody had died is very high when you think about it. It's very likely that there's a Viking grave, Saxon grave, Roman grave, Beaker people grave under your Native American graveyard under your house. So keep the dog out of the kitchen, okay? I'll see you in a moment.